for listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, we want to know how you're listening to us. Whether that's through Apple Podcasts, on our website at iishooting.com/podcasts, whether it's on Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere you can get your podcasts from, it'd really help us out a ton if you could send us a screenshot of where you're listening. You can message us on Facebook and Instagram at Range Minded Podcast or email us podcast@iishooting.com. Thank you. This is episode 59, where we talk about not only taking more than just a basic shooting class, but taking the same class again and the benefits that come from it. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 59 of Range Minded, the reason to take a class twice. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting, the one and only Range Minded. I am the one and only Mark Long, and you are the one and only...
One and only Steve Zimmerman. You know, they broke the mold when they made me, but that was on purpose.
Wow, they just smashed it to the floor?
Yeah, they said we cannot have another one of these roaming around.
To be fair, I don't think I've met anybody like a Steve Zimmerman before.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I'm okay with that.
One of a kind and more cultured than I give you credit for.
Yeah, he doesn't believe me when I throw up these, I don't know, things about videos and movies and TV shows. And then I do. He's like, oh, wow, you're not just some backwards homeschooled weirdo.
Yeah, you get culture over there in Idaho Falls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually very impressed. So, because my big city, born and raised was, you're exposed to everything. So,
yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about today. We're actually going to be talking about education, because we always praise training and education. We talk about it pretty much every time, I would say. And, we wouldn't feel right if we didn't put our money where our mouths were. And so that's why I took another class yesterday.
Yeah, you're rocking it out. I'm over here working so hard I don't have time to get anywhere to do anything fun.
Yeah, you're working too hard, and you got all these, the family to deal with and the kids to feed and everything. I mean, you're a busy man, you know?
Yeah, I need to make time, though. There's no excuse.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I went on a Friday night. We're recording this on a Saturday, and I was Friday night right after work. I went to the shop and I took a class. And
nice.
And actually, it's a class that I took last year. So I've taken this is my second go around in a class.
Same instructor, different instructor.
Different instructor. So I took the intermediate pistol, and I took that probably last summer. Let's just say last summer, because I don't remember when exactly it was.
At some point in history.
Yeah, sometime in the last 365 days or so. And, what it's focused on, it takes you a little past the basics, with holster work. It teaches you how to safely draw the holster or from the holster and manipulate your firearm, shoot a little bit faster, shoot a little bit more accurately. And last year, my instructor was Bill, who was phenomenal. We've had him on the podcast before. He's chatted with us a fair bit. But this time I had Jim Love.
Nice.
And this is this is one of the reasons that I think that if you can swing the time and the money, you should take a class more than once, because even from the same instructor, honestly, because I'll let you finish. No. I was just going to say,
take your wind
from a different instructor, from the same instructor, you don't. So when I take a class, the first time, I take furious notes, and I'm trying to just, take in all the information. There's so much to take in that, you may miss a couple of details here and there, anything. With the second time around, you kind of know what to expect. You know what's going on. So you can maybe focus a little bit more on picking up things that you didn't think about the first time. You're a little more relaxed. Yeah. And that's what I really found with this one. And with a different instructor, it really took, I don't want to say opinion. You don't learn different opinions, but
perspectives.
Yeah, you get different perspectives. That word? Yeah, because, Bill comes from more of a straight law enforcement background. He was, in California doing a lot of law enforcement, and Jim was too. He was Idaho State Police for a very, very long time. But the thing that was different about Jim was that he is a competition shooter.
Yes,
And he
is.
competes quite a lot, and he is quite good, as he demonstrated last night. So I think competition shooters think more in detail about, we've talked about it, of fluidity of movement, economy of motion, what's a little bit faster, what gets you that extra, half second, quarter second, full second over as an edge over a competitor.
And it makes total sense in a competitive world, but it really does relate to a defensive standpoint too, because being able to get out of the holster, deploy that firearm or knife or whatever it is you're using, and to be effective in shot placement. It totally correlates. Yeah,
exactly. And just being able to, present the firearm, put it on target, and get a shot or two off, in a fast amount of time, was the goal. But learning from both of them, in different perspectives was really, I think, a great thing.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and there was a lot that was the same. I mean, it's the same basic curriculum. Obviously, over at the shop, we use the same curriculum for every course. But you're going to see the same slideshow, but then there's different stories and different adages and different tips that I think each instructor gives.
Yeah, well, you can get pizza. You can get pizza all over the place, but some places taste a little different.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly. Or you got your thin crust or your thick crust, or your one place has pepperoni better than the other.
So is Jim thin or thick crust?
I don't know. He's definitely got a little spice on him. I'll say that. He's got some red pepper flakes.
I'm going to see if you can hear this. Hold on. Oh, yeah.
That sounded like ginger beer to me.
No, I wish. I'm going to be over there next week, and I'm going to be buying several boxes.
Well, if they had it at the Costco earlier, so if we need to make a trip over there, I think we can make that happen.
I did hear they have it over there. I'm going to have to see if it's cheaper there than where I normally get it.
Oh, I guarantee it is. Everything's cheap at Costco. You just got to buy a gross of it.
A vat of it. I'm going to buy a keg of ginger beer.
Yeah, man. It's crazy over there. Like we were talking about, it's crazy no matter what time of day or what day of the week you go over to Costco.
So what did you learn in this class that could help you in an environment like Costco?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, think about it. Anything could happen at a Costco at any given moment.
That's true, because there are 6 million people in a Costco at any given time.
That's just one corner.
Yeah, that's in the dairy aisle.
Yeah, or over by the TVs.
I think, situational awareness and being able to manipulate, present the pistol and get it out of the holster and be ready to shoot more easily from any position. And getting to that pistol faster. One thing that Jim talked about a little bit more than Bill, and I want to say first and foremost that, not one was not better or worse than the other. It was just basically, like you said, it was two flavors of similar pizza. It's just with the second class, I was able to, I think, maybe absorb more and notice differences a little bit more in, what the advice is. And we've talked about that a little bit before too, with pistols and just any kind of shooting. It's very personal and you have to find what works for you.
Right.
But we talked about, kind of economy of motion a little bit more, and what Jim said was basically, the movement to get the gun out of the holster is, you take your grip and you come straight up with your arm, and then you rotate, that pistol forward, and from there you can actually shoot. And Bill mentioned that a little bit, but Jim kind of went into a little bit more detail about it. And being able to do that in maybe an advanced class later, and learning how to do that. But he just talked about it's, your arm comes up, it rotates, it goes out, and then just for reholstering, it comes back in, rotates, and comes back down, and how to practice that. And what he actually does to practice for competitions, was pretty applicable to, practicing as a civilian or just as a concealed carrier.
That information is so valuable. Like just getting those little skills goes a long ways.
Yeah. I think one of the things, practicing tips and ways to practice at home, I think was, was what I picked up more from this class. Like I said, not to say that Bill didn't talk about that last time, but like I said, he comes more from a law enforcement background. So the maybe the legalities of it come into play a little bit more. I would say that he, was a little more cautious, not necessarily safety wise. Both of them were very, very safety oriented. And that's one of the things that I like about Independence the most, taking a class from there. I mean, working there, I may be a little biased, but, the goal of the class, they even, on the first slide, was, safety is the priority. It's the goal of the course, and speed will come. We're going to he goes, we're going to take our time. We're going to go really, really slow. He actually told a story about a friend of his who was at Gunsight. And there was a student at Gunsight who was the slowest in the class, but everything he did was picture perfect. Every movement was perfect, placing shots one on top of each other. And eventually they had to ask, what's going on? Like, why are you going so slow with this? Blah, 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 blah. He goes, and the student was, well, I'm actually a Navy SEAL. And I know that if I practice all of this slowly, I can do it quickly, but I want to make sure I do it perfectly. And just that little story, that little anecdote really stuck with me. And it's like, you can take your time, you can, go slow, and there is a time to go fast, but you want to make sure you get the basic mechanics down first.
And that's one thing I see that's kind of the byproduct of bad YouTube videos or bad instructors, is everybody thinks they can just be John Wick right out of the bat. And I took a class, I'm awesome. And they try to just do stupid things on the range. And I don't mean like unsafe, stupid things, but they're just practicing bad habits that they thought were cool because they could do it fast.
Right.
And it's completely the wrong mindset. You're right. You take it slow, learn the mechanics of it, and then you can speed them up later.
Well, and one of the things that I learned a lot more about myself. I think the first class I had never taken a class with a holster before. And obviously I had learned how to draw from a holster before. But really working on it the first time and the mechanics of it, and under the watchful eye of an instructor, you're really a lot more conscious of what you're doing.
Yeah.
And there's some nerves to that. I was a little nervous this first time, first maybe 10, 15 minutes or whatever. But after that, I was doing pretty good. So I was able to kind of focus more on what I was doing and maybe what I was not doing. So I realized I was jerking the trigger a lot. I was shooting low and to the right. And as a lefty, that's a result of jerking the trigger.
Yeah.
And so I was able to feel when I was actually doing that. I was actually able to focus a lot more on my shooting because I knew I had the basics of the holster work down. And, with Jim talking about the fluidity of movement and, putting your hand, your support hand, up by your chest, right on your pec muscle. And the reason, he explained the reason behind that is that, it's closer to the gun when the gun is presented, and you can put your hands together and get that good grip faster, rather than having your hand catch up to it. Once we go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say, or you're slapping the gun when you're trying to meet up those hands if it's out in front of you. And there's a lot of logic to getting a good solid draw stroke, keeping that support hand up there.
Yeah, and doing it slow and figuring it out, and that's what I started to do really slow. And it's funny because my first two shots were literally on top of each other, and it was like, okay, nice. Cool, like I got this. This is great. And then I think I just started to get a little bit excited, But having taken the class the second time, I was able to recognize that and say, okay, like let's breathe, let's take a break, let's just take a second, and we'll calm back down or whatever. And I was able to fix jerking the trigger a little bit, and was able to get him back on target a little bit more. But I was really able to work on my actual shooting, which I thought was great. But I learned a lot more about what I need to work on too, because, if you don't know what you need to work on, you're not really going to have meaningful practice.
Yeah. And a good instructor will help relay that information to you so you can kind of self-diagnose when you're at the range by yourself shooting. And you say, well, man, my shots are doing this. I must be doing X with my hands, or my draw stroke's really sloppy because I'm skipping this step, or I'm hurrying too fast, or
Yeah.
And like I said, a good instructor will teach you, not tell you. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Because he'll tell you what you're doing, and then he'll tell you how to fix it as well.
Yeah.
And it was a small class. It was only me and two other folks. So we were able to get a little bit extra attention, and we spent a little extra time. But I found that I can shoot very quickly, and I can point shoot super fast.
Yep.
But going from and what was interesting was going from like super fast shooting. So we had 3 silhouette targets, and we had to do 2 to the chest on each of them, and then one shot to the head on 3 of them back the other way.
Yeah.
And I was able to go boom, 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 like super fast. Like I was like, because he was like, okay, let's push ourselves a little bit. We did it like 2 or 3 times, and I didn't tell him this. I didn't want him to think that I wasn't aiming, but I was just kind of point shooting. But it was getting there. I mean, shots were on target, and I mean, the if you make a circle with your middle finger and your thumb, and kind of cross them over a little bit, that's how big the circle for the headshot was. And we were only at 3 yards, but I mean, to be able to go boom, 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 like from target to target to target really fast, it really does make you feel like John Wick. But to be able to go from that to then, okay, I'm going to draw a circle the size of a $50, and you have to hit it 5 times from 3 yards. And I couldn't do that. I'm like, oh my God, like I am the worst shooter in the world. It was such an emotional roller coaster. But the point of all of that is that, when you take a class a second time, or even I would say even a second class after your first class, because maybe you take a concealed carry class and then, you want to develop your skills after that, you really gain a lot of knowledge and a lot of ability to self-diagnose and self-correct. Yes. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, and it's such a perishable skill too. If you're not doing it, that's what worries me, because I haven't really spent time. I mean, I've done some shooting out, in the desert over here, but not serious training time in the range.
Right.
And it's going to be a mess when I do.
Well, that's one of the things that both Bill and Jim had said, I remember in both classes, was about practice makes perfect and how that's not true. It's perfect practice makes perfect execution.
Yeah.
And that's why they kept harping on, doing it slowly and taking your time. And I think, in the first class, I was a little more focused on just doing it quickly and the speed of it. This time I was able to say, okay, let's really take our time with it. And let's just think about it in terms of steps. And the other thing is with safety, I touched on it at the beginning, but we spent probably about, and this was in both classes too, the first half an hour was going over just the 4 safety rules. The 4 rules of gun safety is, treat every firearm as if it's always loaded all the time. Don't point the trigger at anything you don't, or don't point the pistol at anything you don't wish to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger till you're ready to fire, and know what your target is and what's beyond it. And we went through each one of those steps. And like I said, there's only 3 of us. He could have easily gone, okay, here's the 4 safety rules. Them. Just don't do anything stupid, blah, blah, blah. Let's go, But he, took the time to say, here's why this first one's important. Here's why the second one's important. And here's a story that goes along with it. Here's, the third, and third and fourth, and so on and so on. And both instructors did that. They really, drive into your head initially that safety is just integral to the whole thing. And then even when we go, they break down, taking, the gun out of the holster and presenting it, as a step-by-step process. And some people say 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps or whatever. We did the 5-step. And just being able to think about it that way makes it so much more digestible than say, yeah, you just yank it out of the holster and, get your sight picture and pull the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I teach holster draw, I teach this probably the same 5 steps. I know when I was over there, I implemented some protocols and stuff, teaching the staff how to get out of the holster, and hopefully they still do it. I don't know. That's not my bag anymore. But yeah. And I think it was Colonel Cooper from Gunsight that kind of developed those steps, or at least identified the steps, and then everybody else kind of went from there.
Yeah, because it goes back to that economy of motion that you want to be able to get that pistol out as fast as you can, as safely as you can, and that was one of the big draws too, or the big focuses was safety. Because if you can't get the pistol out safely, and even Jim said it. He goes, if you don't get this thing safely out and you shoot your hand or a finger off in a gunfight, you're at an extreme disadvantage.
Or out of the fight completely.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to be in that situation. So to be able to do it safely is important. And that always makes me feel more confident to know that you're in good hands, especially if maybe you haven't been shooting all that much, or you're somewhat new to shooting and you're taking that progression of classes.
Yeah, it to me, it's comforting to know. And that's maybe that's how the first sign of a good instructor, that he identifies or she identifies the safety rules. Like you're saying, you spent 20 minutes talking about 4 general firearm safety rules, but it's important to know that they're taking that super serious. And we've talked about some other instructors, maybe not on the air, but that don't take those firearms rules so serious. They just want to show how cool they are to the students and end up being completely awful.
Yeah. And there's a difference between showing an example of a drill and just showing off. You know what I mean? The other thing that I thought was that I didn't ever think about until it happened, that's the mark of a good instructor, is to ask questions of the students before we even get started with the class. Jim introduced himself and he's like, okay, before we get started, does everybody have eyes? Does everybody have ears? Does everybody have, a pistol? Are we using any revolvers tonight? What caliber are we shooting? You can tell that he's been through enough situations to where he needs to get the information he needs right now, at least initially to know what he's working with,
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's another good thing to think about too. And if you don't go to Independence, but you're going to some other instructor, they should be asking you questions. They should want to know what you want to learn, so they know that they're teaching it. A good instructor hopefully is doing that, and not everybody does it. But for me, when I teach, sometimes I'll do the same thing. What do you want to learn from this class? And then I try to make a mental list. If I have something to write down, I'll write it down, so I know that I'm including that particular student's goal of the class. Like, they want to learn something specific, and hopefully I teach that specifically.
Yeah, and just opening up questions, and like I said earlier about shooting is a very personal thing. Everybody does it their own kind of way, and what works for them is important. And so he asked what we were all running and what we had, and it was interesting too, because he even asked, okay, what kind of holsters do you have? Do you have any holsters with retention? And my Safariland GLS has that thumb lock. So he's like, okay, but just, when we're doing the draw, make sure that, you initiate that, or engage that lock or disengage that lock, and then move your thumb out to bring your support hand in. And it was just, it felt very personal. Like I said, granted, there were only 3 people, but, even with, 10, 12, 15 people, I imagine it would have been the same way.
Well, Jim's just a personable guy anyways. You could have probably been in the class of 20 and still at least had a portion of that same feeling from Jim. Yeah,
exactly. And, it's funny because, and I don't know if everybody would agree with this too, but I think all the stories that Bill and Jim and even Leroy and everybody, all the other instructors have, I think those stories really do provide, good examples of why you should do something a certain way, or why you shouldn't do something at all, or just, technique or whatever, It's not to just kind of gratify themselves. It's not for self-gratification, that they actually have a point. And you can tell when somebody's trying to tell a story to look cool versus, trying to make a point. There was what was it? It was about indexing your trigger finger. If you were not ready to shoot, take your finger off the trigger and index it. And Jim told a story about a guy who, long story short, basically didn't take his finger off the trigger when he was trying to holster a 1911, and his finger pushed on either side of the holster as the gun was going into it. And he shot himself in the ass. And I'm like, I don't want to shoot myself in the ass.
Oh man.
So those stories
I'm
are
glad I haven't witnessed anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's just, you're around people who don't think about it. I mean, and the other thing that he talked about was muzzle discipline from the first and foremost. And one of the guys, the other students in the class, we even had plastic guns to start, just blue guns or whatever. And, one of the guys just was kind of not waving it around, but just had it pointed in an odd direction. He goes, up, muzzle discipline, just being on top of stuff like that, is important, I think, especially once you get into the real deal.
Well, I remember teaching when I first started over here in Idaho Falls years ago, we were teaching some kid classes, and same thing, we'd talk about, hey, these are habits you're learning, even though these are toy guns or not toy guns, but not real guns. You got to treat them the exact same way because you're learning a habit. We're not just teaching a class. You're developing a habit of putting it in a safe direction.
Right.
That's good.
And once those are built into, and it's not a knock, like I said, against any of the other students or anything like that. It's just a lot of people just don't know or don't think about it.
Yeah.
I know that if I had to take an RSO class, I wouldn't necessarily think about watching what other people are doing with their firearms.
Yeah. It is super easy to just kind of get complacent about stuff too. And we're all guilty of it. I think every firearm owner is guilty of it at some point. Pointing that gun where they shouldn't have, making a stupid choice, that happens. But if we can minimize it by conscious thinking, that's the point of taking a class is develop some better skills.
Right. It makes you think about it a little bit more. And yeah, one of the big things I think that maybe people don't think about is, obviously you don't want to point it at anybody else, but, pointing it at yourself, whether that's your hand or your foot, or maybe you're trying to put it back in the holster or something like that. And you're actually pointing it at yourself as you try to reholster. I mean,
oh man, I've seen that more than once.
Really?
It makes me sick. Oh.
Just people pointing it right at themselves.
Yeah. Like, I think I've had this conversation. People that really use guns for a living at a high scale, not knowing how to get a gun back into their holster and
really
wiggling that muzzle around all the way through with an untucked shirt. Oh my gosh!
And people who use guns every day.
Yes, these are highly skilled individuals. Well, at least they report it to be.
But that's the whole. Well, not the whole thing, but part of it is that complacency that we've talked about before.
Yeah, and that's what it boiled down to is they're just getting lazy with their trigger or muzzle discipline, and just, oh my gosh. I thought I was going to see blood on the range that night.
Well, what's interesting is that as getting certified as an RSO and being an RSO, it teaches you to watch what other people are doing. And that's something that I've never thought about as until I became an RSO, was watching what other people are doing. And now I can't even help but to watch what other people are doing, just as a safety thing, not only for myself, but for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy about what goes on. And like I say, I think all gun owners do it eventually, is they make, a mental slip, but it's important to be able to identify that and understand and make a recommit to yourself. Hey, that's not happening again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even, in the class, I'll admit, Jim had his, I didn't know he was a SIG guy, first of all. I thought he'd be a Glock guy like the rest of you.
He is. He runs Glock in his competitions, but he's also a 1911. I think he's just a gun guy. I don't think it matters.
Could be. He
has a pretty sweet X5.
Yeah, I was going to say, he had his X5 with him.
I remember when he got that. He was super excited.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, Sarah, big deal. Sarah's got one too.
And if you haven't shot an X5, you would understand why they're so nice to shoot. Oh,
she hasn't let us shoot it yet.
That's a nice gun to shoot.
When you're here, we're gonna have to ask Sarah real nice if we can shoot the X5.
And I'm not gonna lie. Right now, I'm looking at a picture of a CZ SP01 Tactical, and I'm thinking, there's room in my safe.
So actually, sidebar about that gun, I wanted to get that gun so bad for a really long time. And to be completely honest, I'll probably end up with one in my safe at some point or another. However, at the shop, that particular gun in the rental counter has spent more time back in Cody's shop, Cody and Jeff's shop, excuse me, than it has out the rental counter, because I don't know. I just always check to see if it's there or not, because maybe I can shoot it that day or whatever. But yeah, man,
I wonder why.
I don't know. It's always something. But
I'll have to talk to him when I'm over there.
Then again, it's a rental gun, so that might, different circumstances and everything, and it goes for how many thousands of rounds without being cleaned or whatever. But still,
one of my complaints about CZs is, in order to really make it feel amazing, is I got to spend another $600 on a Cajun Works trigger, and I just can't commit myself to do that.
Wait, did you say Glock or CZ to make it better?
CZ. Did I say Glock?
I don't know, because it sounds like the exact same thing you have to do with a Glock to make it better.
Whatever, dude.
Well, I'm going to mill my slide. I'm going to get some trigger work done and put some different sights on it. I'll get a, new
true, but
spring and put stippling on it. And
here's the deal. What gun can you take out of the box and not want to do something to?
My trusty Walther PPQ.
That's funny because you Cerakoted it.
That was not a tactical decision. That was an aesthetic decision.
Did you put night sights on it?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Well, not yet. Not yet.
What about the trigger? Did you have it, polished up a little bit?
Nope.
A feed ramp? Did you do anything with the feed ramp?
Nope. The only thing I've done is Cerakote it, and this is the gun that I've taken the enhanced class with, the enhanced concealed carry class with, intermediate class twice, and I will be taking the advanced pistol class in 2 weeks.
It's a Walther. It's going to break.
All right. Well, if it breaks, I'll throw it at the target and just walk out and call it a day.
I don't know. I can't keep anything stock. I mean, you've seen a lot of my guns. Most of them don't stay. In fact, I can't think of any of my handguns. Well, okay, there's a couple I can think of that I haven't messed with. But
well, and to be fair, I think you've kind of rubbed off on me in that regard, because I got the slide Cerakoted on my PPQ. I have the slide Cerakoted on my PPS. Now, granted, I could just say that was for research and podcast purposes, but they look pretty sweet, so I'll just go with that. But my Scorpion is CZ Scorpions, all customed out. Obviously all the AR, both 3 ARs are pretty, were built and custom parts and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to bring, and this is a teaser because we're going to do an AK episode with Cody at some point in the near future. And I'll bring my Wasser in, and he's going to help me kind of polish that stuff up a little bit. So it's just, there's nothing wrong with customizing.
That's just me, man. I can't just leave it. I do have a couple. I got a Quigley. I have 73 sharps that, you can't do too much to, right?
Well, and there's things you don't want to mess with. Yeah.
Yeah. But when it comes to a modern firearm, but still, like I said, that CZ specifically, man, those Cajun Works triggers are the bomb.
They really are.
They're literally, it's just as much as a gun.
I know. It's ridiculous. And those guns aren't cheap. No CZ is cheap. The only one,
even if you go to like the tactical sport or in those, man.
Well, and I even thought about
$1,500.
Yeah, and I thought about even getting like one of the Shadows or one of the like a Shadow or a Phantom. It's like I think it's a polymer version of the SP01 or whatever. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I want the big, heavy, all steel gun, man. I don't know why. So I did end up getting a Jericho 941 because I want to be different.
Those are interesting guns, and they don't feel too bad to shoot, honestly.
No, they're actually pretty. It's a different shape. Trigger shoe is a different shape than what I'm used to, and so that was kind of interesting. And I think I was jerking that trigger a little bit too, to be honest with you, when I shot it the first time.
They do feel different in the hand, and I don't know how to explain why they feel different.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like a CZ. It doesn't feel like, a lot of people say it's a CZ clone, and
no,
mechanically sorta. It kind of is, especially because the slide rides inside of the frame.
Yeah,
but other than that, not really. I mean, it's got
but the grip, the grooves in the grip, like everything just kind of fits in your hand.
It does. It just kind of,
and I don't know how to explain it.
I don't know.
If you haven't touched a Jericho, go find one and put one in your hands, and you'll understand what I'm saying. It feels different.
Yeah, I think it takes a little getting used to, but I mean, I like it's big, it's heavy. It's got 16+1. The trigger is actually pretty good out of the box. I might take it.
And that's hammered, right? That's the one that's got the hammer on it, right?
Yeah, and there's no decocker on it either. They make two different versions. I think they make
I missed the one with the decocker on it.
The frame safety is the one that I have, and then there's the slide safety. And I got the one with the frame safety. So you have to.
Yeah, I was going to say doesn't have a decocker on it. I thought it did.
No, so you either carry it cocked and locked like you would a 1911, or you have to manually take that hammer down, and there's a lot of tension in that hammer when it's back. So I would carry it cocked and locked if I were ever to do that. So, but what's also interesting about it is that it does have a kind of like a half cock position.
Really?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of, you pull the hammer back and there's kind of a little click, like there's a first click and then there's the second click for the full cock. So you can actually bring it down to the half cock position if you really wanted to.
Can you run the safety in half cock?
Yes.
Interesting. So you could legitimately keep it half cock, safety on, and then pull that hammer back to deploy.
Yeah, if you wanted a full single shot or a single action shot off your first shot, yeah. And it's not too hard to do because the hammer does come back pretty well.
But in double action from half cocked, it works that way too? I guess it would have to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting little gun. I'll have to bring it over when you're here so you can check it out.
Which will be next week.
Which is going to be next week, yes. That's great news. So,
and we're going to have an awesome couple episodes. I'm excited for the holster episode.
Yeah, we've got another holster episode coming up. We've got, I think, an AK episode with Cody coming up. We're going to talk with somebody who...
Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett, who we haven't talked about much on the podcast because he is... He's kind of like the wind. He comes and goes when he wants to.
That should be an interesting conversation with Barrett. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
That'll be a good one. So yeah, stay tuned for the episodes coming up. But anyway, back to classes.
Yeah, let's kind of strayed for a second. I'm sorry.
Got a little in the weeds on that one. So what else is interesting about this class is if you can get into a class that doesn't have a lot of people in it, and which I don't know why there weren't a lot of folks in this class, but maybe it's because it was a Friday night. I don't know. But it was only three of us. So we were supposed to bring 200 rounds. I brought 250. We ended up shooting about 400 or 450.
Wow.
Rounds, which is clearly not the norm. So if you ever go into Independence, expecting to shoot that much, don't.
Yeah, that's just because you had a smaller class gives, like you say, more one-on-one time and apparently more shooting time, which is cool.
Yeah, 100%. We went through the drills a lot faster since there were only three of us. He didn't have to do a lot of correcting. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, we made it through. We were in the middle of a drill, and he's like, I had to change mags, and I grabbed the other mag, and it was empty. And he kind of looked at me, and he goes, "What?" And I go, "I'm out." And he goes, okay, well, we could be done, but we still have like half an hour. I'm like, okay, I'll just go get some more. And so I got 100 more rounds and blasted through all of them, I think, except for 10, maybe, so it was 400, nice. 450 rounds, which was interesting too, because that's more rounds than I think I've ever shot in one sitting.
It goes by quick.
It goes by very quickly because that probably was about 2 hours of live fire shooting. But I also learned the first time now how shooting can be actually pretty fatiguing if you're going at it at a high rate of fire, and it's very mentally draining.
It is. And I think it's because you're focusing. I mean, obviously you're using your eyes, so you got some strain there. You're really thinking about where your hands are, so there's some mental strain there. Plus, your arms are fatiguing. Your legs get tired because you're tightening up them legs. I could see how it makes you tired about that after that long. Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I was kind of getting a headache at the end of it from my eyes, just from trying to focus on things, and being, left-handed but right-eye dominant probably messes with me a little bit more than your average person. But just, your body's absorbing all that recoil too, and doing that, 400 times was, gets tiring. Yeah.
And then it was interesting too, because we were switching gears pretty quickly from, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to shoot, like I said earlier, it's two hits in each silhouette. There's 3 silhouettes in the chest and then 1 in the head each. So that's, 9 rounds total. And you shoot that in 2 seconds or 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And focusing and getting ready to do that really kind of amps you up and your heart rate's up. And then once it's done, it's like, whew, okay, like I made it, I can relax. But then going from that, okay, we're going to focus on accuracy now. And we did what he called a last man standing drill. And there were, and the targets were a little bit different this time too, because normally we've had, just like either bullseye style targets or larger, 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper or legal pad papers or whatever. This was probably about maybe a piece of paper a foot tall, but maybe 6 to 8 inches wide. So it's just a rectangle. And it was funny because Jim goes, all right, if you shoot any outside of the yellow, you owe me $0.25. So I was like, oh my God, I just don't want to shoot anything outside of the yellow. And I was actually pretty proud of myself. I didn't shoot anything outside of the yellow until about the very end when I was starting to fatigue. We started to do one-handed shooting and I just fell apart. I don't know what the hell happened.
Sure.
I don't know what it was, but it's like and when I did the Not a Koala about a month or 2 ago, and that's where I fell apart too, was the one-handed shooting. I don't know what it is, but
you like that?
I do like it a lot.
That was my baby.
And there's multiple levels, right?
Much. Well, I don't know if they finished it. The level 1 was my creation, and I thought it was a pretty good one.
Fun. Ben, Long Range Ben, and Jessica, and I did it. Ricky was there too. He did it. He was the only one that passed, actually.
I still haven't passed.
Yeah,
I haven't shot it.
I made it, but I never passed. But it's a really good it's a really good qual, actually. I enjoyed it a lot because it does kind of combine your speed and combines accuracy. But one of the things about classes too that I kind of figured out was that it really shows you how good you can be. Even with just a little instruction. Like I said, I was kind of talking about, and I got sidetracked, but we did this drill called Last Man Standing, where we had to do 3 shots from 3 yards, and then we would take a step back to 5 yards, and then to 7, and then to 10, 12, 15. And if you shot outside that little yellow target, you were out. And I was the last man standing. Thank God. I was like, I just don't want to be. I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose. But to be able to, put 3 in this, relatively narrow target at 15 yards, it doesn't sound like much maybe to some people, but especially after a couple hundred rounds of shooting, I was happy with it. I'll take it.
Yeah, that's pretty good, honestly. I think. I mean, there's probably people out there like, oh, that's nothing, and that's fine. Think what you want. It's good for Mark.
Well, shoot your own shot. You know what I mean? I don't get to shoot as much as I like, unfortunately, and but it's one of those things, kind of like with working out. Like, lifting 40 pounds may not be a lot to somebody who's a bodybuilder or something like that, but if you've never lifted before and you just reached that milestone, you're going to be happy about it.
Hell yeah.
And that's something I would say about classes too, is don't focus on what other people are doing. And if you maybe are experienced and have a couple classes and stuff, don't try to show off. We didn't have any show offs in our class. I hope I wasn't a show off. I was just trying to not owe Bill money.
You were the one. Money. The other 2 were like, oh my gosh, that Mark guy.
Oh man. But, I don't know. It was just, you get to shoot your own target. You're competing really against yourself, and that's what's important.
Yeah, that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, it's and really being able to get those fine-tuned points is really amazing how quickly you can pick it up and how quickly you can apply that. I mean, to shoot, I had never shot, 3 targets like that before. And, we were shooting, a couple drills before that was single silhouette, but 5 shots, and 5 shots, bam, 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 as fast, not as fast as you can, but just as fast as you can do it safely. And I think a lot of people are not afraid, but more hesitant or not used to, fast shooting. I don't think it's something a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And so being able to do that was is actually a lot more fun. I actually like shooting. I like shooting fast. And it just, but being able to build on your skills and get better like that, like if I was shooting as fast as I was and I wasn't getting it all in on the target, I would have, slowed way down. But the fact that I was able to get it all on target and shoot 5 shots pretty quickly back to back to back to back to back I was proud of myself, and it gives you a lot of confidence that after taking enough classes, you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But there's always room for improvement.
Always.
And like you talked about with it being a perishable skill, it is, but I feel like you can pick it back up pretty quickly. So, if you probably shot 100 rounds, you'd probably pick it right back up where you left off.
I hope so, because I need it.
Well, are you going to be shooting next week?
Oh, I'll be shooting some next week.
I hope so.
I'll be finishing the P51 1911.
Really?
I need to, because it's been like a year and a half. I only got a few parts left to Cerakote and put it together and shoot it.
Nice.
And then the holster. We're going to be building a holster for the Glockster.
Yeah, I'm excited to get that P38 a holster so I can open carry that while I'm RSOing, because that's just going to look weird as hell.
Yes.
It'll be a good time.
Yeah, I'm excited. I need to spend some time behind that gun, among others, and maybe I'll bring an AR pistol or something over there.
Yeah, there you go. That's your passenger seat gun right there.
Usually is. Always have something.
Have you ever taken a class twice?
I think I have for the US or the concealed carry class. That was over here. I'm pretty sure I did. But I think it was the same instructor both times. Did
you notice any difference?
Not really. Not for the most part. It was pretty cut and dry. It was just a cookie cutter class, so there wasn't a lot.
Wasn't anything special?
There. No.
That's unfortunate, but...
Yeah. But any time in a class is a good time. Well, for the most part.
As long as you have a good instructor.
Yeah. I've heard horror stories of people walking out of concealed carry classes. None of our classes, but like the shooting portions where it's just so unsafe, they just leave.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because my first ever class was a concealed carry class for Illinois, concealed carry. Never taken a class before, hadn't really done much instruction at all with shooting. I was all self-taught pretty much. Obviously very safety conscious, because I knew that, I didn't want to get kicked out of the class or, anything like that. But just the guy, and he was a good enough guy, but there was a lot of opinion, which you don't find at Independence. There's tips and stories, I think, that illustrate certain points, but, right. There was some political opinion, which I think doesn't really have much of a place in a class. And then we talked about, I forgot about this until just now. This is gonna make you squirm. Everybody in the classroom got their pistols out. Everybody made sure they were clear, and then we started dry firing in the class, and it was like rows of people. And I didn't know any better at the time, but I was
you had people dry firing behind you, or
yeah.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Terrifying. In hindsight, back when I started, I'm like, okay, I didn't know any better. It's all unloaded. It doesn't matter. Now I probably would have I'm either sitting in the back or I'm not taking this class, because this is not how to run this.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we had to bring a holster. And I had a holster, but I had never really practiced drawing from a holster. And they spent maybe 10 minutes on how to draw from a holster. And I just, in the class that I just took last night for the second time, was only drawing from the holster and putting the gun on target.
That's crazy.
Terrifying, isn't it?
That is super sketchy.
So make sure that you get a good instructor, and don't be afraid to maybe walk out of a class. Yeah, maybe you're going to eat some money, but it's better than a hole in the head.
Yeah, just walk out. If If you feel at any point unsafe, it's not worth it. It might not even be worth like trying to get your money back. It's just lose it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it was a great time. Go ahead, go out, take a class again if you have the money and the means with which to do so. And I'm going to take the advanced class, not this upcoming week, but the following week at the end of May here. And I'll report back on that. We'll do an episode on advanced pistol shooting.
I think I'm going to have to just spend a weekend and come over and take a class or two because it's not healthy for me to not shoot.
Right. It's not good for your health. You need to shoot.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and it was funny because I was talking to a couple of the guys at the shop and they're like, hey, man, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, I'm taking a class or whatever. I'm like, I need to force myself to shoot more, and I love to learn. So if I take a class, I'll shoot more. And I ended up shooting more than I thought I would, or more than I ever have in one sitting. So how about that?
See?
But now I realize it's kind of like weight training or like, getting fit and everything is, okay, I shot 400 rounds, which was a lot. And I was getting fatigued at the end and I was getting frustrated because it's like, man, I was shooting so great at the beginning and I could shoot so fast. And now I can't hit this stupid, $50 size circle from 3 yards away. What the hell's the matter with me? Blah, 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 blah. But now like I know that I can shoot 400 rounds. I might be a little fatigued at the end, but still it's just, you can do it now and that you can shoot fast and I can build on those skills when I go practice.
I think I'm going to have to set up my little loophole shot for you to try while we're over there shooting.
The loophole shot.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
So do you know what, you don't know what a loophole is?
No.
You ever heard that term? So snipers use loophole shooting to shoot from inside. I'm not a sniper, never was one, never pretend to be one, but they use a loophole, which would be a small opening in a barrier,
okay,
that they shoot from behind, and there's a mathematical equation to figure out, all that jive from a distance. Anyway, I set up a loophole shot in the range using some cardboard targets, and then I set like a playing card at 65 feet, and you set the loophole. It's a 2-inch square opening in a cardboard target. You shoot through the 2-inch opening at the playing card at 65 feet.
And you got
it more than once.
And you have to hit it.
And if you hit the cardboard, it doesn't count.
Man, that would be fun. I would be down to try it. That's fun. For sure.
It is fun. I set it up a while ago over there one time and had some of the employees try it out that thought they were hot stuff and had to laugh at them.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, man, is that when you see people shoot, I mean, the other thing is you really gain an appreciation for like people like Jerry Mitchell, obviously, or like Taryn Butler. It's one thing to watch on YouTube, be like, okay, that's easy or whatever. But then when you see like somebody like Jim or Bill like shoot accurately and shoot quickly and how fast they can do it in person, it's a whole nother thing. And then you think that, these guys are very, very good. But then there's people like Taryn Butler, Jerry Mitchell out there. It's like, oh my, these people are otherworldly.
Eclipse them.
Yeah.
And you think, and if you guys don't know what Taryn Butler looks like, Google him. He is not a small man.
we've
but
talked
he
about
can
it.
Just move.
And he's soft. He's a plushy guy.
Yeah.
But man, I wouldn't want. He's the guy who trained Keanu Reeves for John Wick, and he also trained Halle Berry. You might have seen that online the other day.
That's been floating around, and I'm going to see that movie when I'm over there next weekend.
Yeah, I've got to see that movie soon. So I actually have to finish the second one. I never finished the second one.
That's not acceptable.
I know. So, well, it is Saturday night tonight, so maybe that's what I'll do this evening. So,
did you like the second? Did you like the first one?
Oh yeah, the first one was phenomenal.
And what you saw of the second one, did you like it?
Loved it. Yeah, I just need to finish it. I just something came up and I ran out of time and had to switch gears.
Oh man, there's some sweet gunfight scenes in that.
But it's hard for me to sit and watch a movie anyway. I need to like do things and move around. I have like 7 things going all at once. So maybe it's the millennial ADD. I don't know.
I used to be that way. Now I just don't want to do anything. So I'll watch a movie.
Well, I can't wait to get old.
Thank you.
Seasoned, maybe. We'll go with seasoned. So
Seasoned professional.
Yeah. So, but we'll close on that for now, I think, and take a class. If you have any questions about our classes at Independence, shoot us a message on Facebook, Range Minded Podcast, or email us podcasts@iishooting.com. Yeah. That's all I got.
No, that's cool. I think it was fun. We need to be doing that more often. So next couple of podcasts, don't forget, we're going to have Nick from Hoftac Holsters. We're going to be doing kind of a remote broadcast, sort of.
Yeah, we're going to take a field trip over to the Ultimate Hybrid Holster headquarters. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
And we're gonna make some custom Kydex holsters. We're going to learn how to make Kydex holsters.
It'll be fun.
And we're gonna talk with Cody Coleman again, the famous. Talk about AKs a little bit. And why you should own one, because Cody goes, everyone should own an AK. It's great.
Yeah, I had one and I sold it.
Shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I'll find another one.
That's true. Just dive down to the bottom of a lake.
Wow, it's so far down.
You got to get your flippers out and everything.
Every time I buy a boat, it sinks. It just doesn't work out for me.
Yeah, I'd love to be your insurance agent. And then we're going to have Barrett on. Barrett is a hunting extraordinaire, outdoorsman, an interesting soul.
Yeah, and he teaches an interesting class, and that's kind of what I want to talk to him about. So you guys, I think you might want to listen to the Barrett episode.
Yeah, that'll be a good grab bag episode. We'll talk about that. But yeah, stick around with us. We got some great stuff coming up, and we'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, have fun, guys.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.